Let's see if we're live. We are live. Let's go. Welcome, guys, girls, everyone watching. This is it. We are here to pick up right where we left off. I was hoping to do it all in one session, but I was a couple hours in, needed a little bit of a break. So if you haven't already, check out part one, which is on my channel for this, and you'll be able to get all of the details and the thoughts and workflow that got us to this point. From here, I basically want to just fly through matching the rest of the clips, which I think we all have sort of a good understanding of what that's going to look like, and then move to the next stage, which is adding grain and kind of bringing all the clips together, and then doing a couple quick passes to do any real tweaks if something feels off, and see if we can land in a great place. So I'm happy with where things are sitting up until here. This clip is our next challenge. We're trying to match it to this very shady clip that we have, both a Lumetri mask going on and also quite a bit of grading. So trying to work into where the sun's at. So I'm going to go ahead and copy what I've got. Is it this guy? Yeah. And go ahead and copy this Lumetri and delete what's currently on this channel as I threw it on just for a quick temp placeholder. There we go. Already heaps closer to where we want it to be. You'll notice that the sky is almost matching on both of these. It's feeling a lot closer already. I'm seeing maybe a little too much warmth in the shadows that we've done here with the creative. So I might pull back a little bit there. We want to pull up our side by side and go to both this one, which I can see it is a little bit warmer, and then this guy. So it's not that different. Skin tones feel pretty similar. Obviously, I have a sunburn here regardless, so I'm pretty happy with the shadows now that I've pulled back just a little bit. I think I'll keep that where it was. Now here we're going to have to mess with the brightness. Okay, we don't need the side by side for that. I don't want to lose all of my detail in the clouds. So as much as I can, I'm going to try and pull some of this out of the highlights without losing too much detail. Bringing up those shadows a bit. And keeping that punchy. Black level is, I'm going to just see. I'm going to actually leave black level where it's at because I don't want to bring down any of the shadows on the face with the hat. Let's see. My saturation, I can probably set that back to 100 since we're not in trying to compete. Yeah, that's feeling pretty close. Trying to think if there's anything else I really want to do here. This isn't full sun yet. It's kind of an in-between because later we get a lot more sun. So I think this is still working for me. So, okay, here we're back into a forest clip with a bit of sunlight. So I'm going to see if I can find a shot in here. I think earlier, this is a very subtle one. I'm going to use that as my starting point. Sound effects control. You don't have to close it. You can leave it open. Sometimes I close it just in case I start stacking stuff. It stays more organized. But essentially, I'm going to paste that on. Gives us a little bit of a starting point. And if I want to match to what the other shot was, I'm able to sort of, pull a shot that we've already graded. Maybe something that's a little bit more in the realm of it, like that. See what we can do to bring out similar colors. A lot of it's just going to be the exposure. That actually looks better, but I want it to also still match. Okay. Let's get the amount of orange and yellow close. Yep. Starting to vibe with this. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring it a little bit closer and just really start getting the details. I do like to do a couple of passes of the same sliders because once I've found a sweet spot on all of it, sometimes a little bit of movement is all that's needed to be the difference between good and great. So this to me is now feeling a lot more balanced, and I want to just scrub through the clip, see if there's any bright or dark parts that change it. Now how does this transition and match? Yeah, that seems to work. If anything, it might be a little bit on the bright side. Okay. So what do I have underneath? Oh, it's a different clip option, but go ahead and stick with what I'm using. Okay, do we have anything that we've already graded similar to this? Maybe this guy, because it's in the same place. I'm going to go ahead and copy. And now let's just dial back. I want to keep some detail in the clouds. And again, we can pull up a comparison here to see how it's looking. But the main thing I'm going to want to make sure is that the sky is going to match between this and our talking piece of camera head piece, whatever we call that, this guy. That's the first one. That's the second one. So that's the one that we're closest to. Sky's close. Yeah. Could add a bit of saturation or to kind of help bring it up. Just trying to make things match right now. We'll get the overall feel in a bit. I'm trying to still keep the foreground a little bit dark. I like those details in the shadows. Before, after. Yep. Next clip. Go ahead and just copy what I just did from here. Now it's a bit orange. Let's reset the saturation. Slide here. Doesn't seem too far off. If you look at the green here at the foot and the green sort of there, similar. Sky's a bit flat. So you might want to bring up the get that sky to match. And then there's our previous shot. Looking pretty good. Okay, now we're coming back to a shot we have not graded yet, but this shot is similar to this guy, except the sun's a little bit more out. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy. Delete what's there. And then let's just dial back. I like to go exposure first usually, and then any of the parameters, especially the ones I've pushed hard. Again, I'd normally bring the blacks down to about here, which I'll still probably do. I just want to be mindful of how that's affecting the shadows here in the hat. I don't know if I want to... Yeah, I probably want to push a bit of the brightness up here. Let's bring up our side by side. See how much the lighting change is throwing us. Okay, it does feel more full sun, but colors, sky, yeah. We have 3 shots between as well though. So, the only thing I'm seeing here is how warm it is now, which is probably because we have some shadow tint that we've added in. We want to keep a little bit of it. Maybe not as much. Okay, let me turn the creative on and off. So yeah, that's not a ton of warmth, just a little bit. And there's our basic grade. I was thinking it might be a little pinkish. I do want to reference quickly now our other main piece to camera, talking and see if we're still in the same ballpark on skin tones, saturation, all that other good stuff. Not far off. It could be dialed in a little bit. Let's see.
We can receive wholeness and
let's see, one more little pass. Yeah, I'm pretty much landing where I was because, sure, it helps with the shadows if I do this, but, you know, there's always a trade-off. So it's like, it looks better on the background or it looks better on the subject. And so at some point, I am also just trying to find overall what is a nice balance. I think this is the only one I've ended up really changing much, but again, substantial difference. That still looks like the same, just like the lights changed, which is what we're going for. Perfect. Cool. All right, this, I know I have one very similar to this. I think it was maybe here. Yep. Not the same shot, but I think it was recorded at the same time and it's of the same tree. So we're just going to go ahead and paste that there, and unless it
be
throws
right
us,
in God's eyes. When Eve looked at
it's not really throwing me. I feel like overall it's pretty good. And let's compare it to, we can jump through scenes this way as well. And we're full sun, which is this here. There we go. So how's this translate to this? Make it just slightly brighter. Made myself some tea, just waiting for it to be cool enough to drink. Yeah, I think that'll do it. So, before, after. Okay, this is almost the same, I think, as what we've just worked on. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that guy. You know the drill. There we are. That and that are almost identical lighting. So, I'm going to keep playing with this. Yep. That's a kind of in between the sun out and not sun out, then sun out, no sun out. Yeah, it's all working. It's working for me. Cool. Plenty of talking there. Another drone shot. So, drone shot, I'm going to go ahead and cut our adjustment layer. Make a space for it. And then I'm going to hold Option, pull this underneath it just so that I can trim it to size, bring it into the level that I have adjustment layer on. And you'll notice that that's a bit of contrast in color, but it's not as overpowering. Then for this, I'm not going to pull in another drone clip that I've already edited. I'm just going to tweak it here based on what I'm seeing. Of course, there is text there, so I don't want it to compete. That feels better. So this is, highlights and whites are really where you're going to start competing with the text. So I want to be mindful of how much I bring those up, whereas overall exposure obviously is as well. But before, after, I think it just helps it bring it into the world that we're in. I'm also wondering if it needs a little bit of warmth. I think it does. I don't want a lot of tint. But if we compare that, and now we disable, oh yeah, and then the adjustment layer, that's our creative LUT. The kinetic 03 is that guy. So if you jump into here, kinetic 03, that's what we're seeing on this adjustment layer. But I have brought the intensity down and the contrast down, which is I go over in part 1 of this live. Okay, cool. I'm happy. We're back here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete. This is full sun, as I'll count it. Delete what we had and grab the Lumetri from this previous clip, which is also full sun. Paste it. Look at the two. We're very close. Very close. So I think we're cooking with gas, as they would say. Let's just watch a second of this and see how it feels if we're playing it.
Calvary, where we have the death and resurrection of Jesus.
That's not graded.
And we're offered the same decision as Adam and Eve, which is, will we believe God at his word?
So this guy is probably similar to this guy, except without the subject. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste it. Yeah, that already feels very close because it's almost the same lighting. Let's quickly address anything that we do want to change. And so on this, it's for me right now, it's a little bit less of like, what's the best looking shot as far as like grading this as a standalone, and a little bit more of, all right, cool, this needs to cut well with what we just came through. And what I'm really realizing is the black level that's throwing me. So if I bring that down solid amount, I really start to get back some of the detail in the background. And if you see here, there's a ton of detail in the background. And so I want to be mindful with the shadows and the black level where we end up kind of matching here my luminosity between the two with this guy. I'll go ahead and bring down the shadows even more. Try and make the clouds and sky sort of similar. Might go up a little bit on that. And I think it needs a little bit of warmth. Kind of have this similar look and feel. That to me feels a lot closer now. I think there's a bit more contrast on the other image. So I'll go ahead and just add a little bit because I plan to add more contrast later. But that to me now feels, before, after, like it's there. And in the creative, I like it. Those now speak the same language, right? They're in the same space. So that's great. Am I happy with the clip there?
Where we have the death in where we have
I don't know if I want to maybe start it here.
Where we have the death and resurrection of Jesus, and we're offered the same decision as Adam and Eve.
So at that very end, I can see that the clip sort of starts to just end. So
Adam and Eve.
Yeah, I don't mind the slight jump, but I don't want it to be too much. So I guess here is sort of where it starts.
Where we have...
Let's see. It's better if we do this.
Calvary. Where we have the... Where we have...
So color grading, usually when I'm at this stage, I'm pretty happy with where things are. But if now that I'm in the details of the grade and something feels off, I sometimes will tweak a little bit. I just try not to do too much unless it's really needed.
Side of Calvary, where we have the...
The other thing I'm listening to is this song has like a little hit.
Calvary,
Boom.
where we...
So it would make more sense to happen here. So
Calvary, where we have the death and resurrection of Jesus, and we're offered the same decision as Adam and Eve. Same.
And maybe we come back here because of the music.
Where we have the death and resurrection of Jesus, and we're offered the same decision as Adam and Eve.
Yeah, I like that because then there's a little hand movement, and so cutting on the movement seems to always help make an edit feel more natural. So let's just watch this.
Of Calvary, where we have the death and resurrection of Jesus, and we're offered the same decision as Adam and Eve, which is, will we believe God at His word? Will we choose Him, or will we choose our own way? Will we choose our sin?
So there is quite a bit of wind blowing. We could do some stabilization on the shot. I usually do any stabilization that I need sort of at this phase as well. But I kind of like it because you're hearing it in the audio, that you see something as well. And so it kind of feels a little more natural to have both happening together.
Adam and Eve, which is, will we believe God at His word? will we choose him or will we choose our own way? Will we choose our sin? Will we choose what appears to be right in our own eyes?
And we can clean up some of the audio in post, but we'll probably leave a little bit so it feels natural. Okay, so again, drone shots. So I'm gonna pull this adjustment layer away. I'm gonna go ahead and just hold Option, drag that to there. So this is slightly less contrasty, but still has that nice color look. Okay, cool. Now let me just work on this DJI clip a bit. To me, the first thing I'm noticing is we really need to bring up the shadows. Yeah, that's where most of our detail's happening. So even before, I mean, if we bring the exposure up, you see how much the whites over here in the top right are just blowing out, because there is some detail happening. If we look here, there's some detail up here already. So if we push anything that's in the highlights or exposure range, it's just gonna blow that out. So you'll see the whites, they just boom, disappear. So what I am gonna do is I'm gonna pull back a little bit on the whites. Not so much. That's also a bit of the brightness in the image. Yeah, probably 31-ish. I am gonna push the highlights up, which is sort of that more middle space in the spectrum, but they're not being affected a ton. And then let's check the blacks. I think down just 0.6 seems right. Now, I think we will want to bring in some of the color. Go side by side here, see what it looks like. I don't know if we need any tint. I think what's really working is the temperature being warmer. The image, move through it a little bit. So if we disable what we just did, we'll see without our edit, that really helps. So I'm gonna say that's okay for now. I'm happy. Let's go ahead and just copy and paste what we just did on this previous drone shot to the next drone shot. It's headed in the right direction. I think we'll just wanna pull back on some of the moves we did. So I do agree with pulling this down. My goal is to make the moves as little as possible. So rather than going 70 here and then backing it out here, like I do try and make my moves as gentle as possible while still carrying what's needed. So a lot of shadow here, but when we bring it up across the board, we start to wash out the top of the mountains. So again, this is like the balance game now, where any move we make, there's a trade-off for. It's like this is brighter in the shadows, but then you're losing that beautiful saturation that comes from sort of the slightly darker color, the richer colors that come from the darker spectrum. So that's closer. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up my comparison now. It's not bad from here. Let's look at the shot that we're comparing it to, which is, this is what comes before. Like, how's the color of the hill with the color of the hill? That's sort of similar here. That's the kind of stuff I'm looking at. Like, we do have a bit more detail now. I'm not too worried about the sky because the sky's a bit more blown on the left side. So it's probably not as important. Okay, if you see here now, the greens and the shadow and stuff, they seem to be in the same space. Looking at the sky, because I know this now has a lot of sky, So we will just go ahead and copy what we've now worked on to the next clip. See what that does to it. So you can see here, if we jump in our side by side to these clips, we're getting very similar color space, but it is just a different image. It's a different amount of shadow, different amount of stuff. So I think we will want to kind of just quickly do a little pass and see what's being affected, how the highlights really blow quick on that. I might actually see if I bring the exposure down, the sky looks better, but then we lose the detail here because of the dynamic range of this. I think just gentle moves. It's probably going to be the name of the game. Yeah, that's probably only around 3. Okay. How does this go then to that and that? Sky color and all. Yeah, this feels a bit warmer because it's in direct sun. But I think this is probably close to where we want it to be. If anything, we'll just add in a little bit of this to help the sky's color come back. So now that we've got that, our next clip is full sun again. So I can go ahead and delete the temporary Lumetri that I had on it while I was editing. I'm gonna grab the Lumetri from over here, this guy, which was full sun. I'm gonna paste it here. Looks like we're spot on. Nothing that we need to do. How does the transition? Okay, so sky is a very different color here. That's might be a little bit too much, so I'm going to go into our creative here and just mess a little bit with the highlight tint. Push it a little bit more into the greeny space. You'll notice in the sky there's that hue that we see in the cross footage. So this hue is right here. So it does match. It's just that in this drone shot, you're getting a lot more of the sky. So you're not getting just this little bit here. You're also, and if I do this, you might be able to see clear. You're not just getting that. You're getting the rest of, what the sky holds. And so I will want to pull it a little bit. I think this sort of direction is going to help. Don't want to lose the warmth that we're getting. That feels a little bit better now. So if I drop this side by side and we just scrub this sky, they still seem to kind of work together. This has a bit more blue in it. But the mountain range here and the mountain range in sort of that similar space seems to speak the same language. So I'm not opposed to it. I would say we keep moving. There's a lot of dynamic range here, but here you can see where there's like the sun is and the clouds are sort of just hitting spots. It still looks nice. In our spectrum, we seem to be okay. I might try coming lower on the, just slightly lower on the blacks to make it look a little bit more true, because the blacks here are quite dark. Beautiful, beautiful, cool. Happy with that. Let's jump along to the next drone shot. Okay, so this drone shot is actually picking up right where that first opening drone shot starts. So in part 1, this guy, which we already graded. So I'm just going to grab the Lumetri from that. And hopefully that's all we need. Where are we? Here. Okay. No Lumetri on it. Go ahead and paste it. How does it translate from this to this? So what I am seeing now is this sky, which we kind of addressed by grading to be a little bit more, for this piece of the camera, is a little bit blue and kind of out. So I am potentially going to rein it in a bit here by highlight tint. Because these shots aren't playing side by side with, the opening shot and this aren't going to be compared together because there's, 8 minutes between them. I'd rather it match where the shots are around. So that to me feels closer. There's also a bit more warmth in it, so I might want to bring that up. Alternatively, I'm just going to do this for fun. I'm going to turn off the Lumetri. Here, I'm going to grab this guy's color grade. I've disabled the Lumetri in here, and I'm going to paste it and just see. So that's quite orange now. That's quite intense. I don't know that I prefer that, so I'm going to switch back. Yeah, we are closer on the first batch. I'm going to just delete it. So how does this cut? Again, one more quick little pass, see if we're able to find a happy trade-off. Yeah, I don't know if that probably feels better. Cool. Happy with that. The other thing I can do here is just the actual tint.
To him according to his original design. See, we all have purpose. We all have intent because he created us for.
Yep. Tint, intent. Okay, so because this cuts from here to here and they are similar shots, I'm going to go ahead and just copy what I did to the next one. See how it translates. Already looks good. Because we tilt up and we see some brighter parts of the image, we don't want to push it too far, but I might be able to add a little bit of detail to the shadows. And there's also going to be the text on screen. So I don't want it competing, which is why I'm going to bring the exposure back down to 0.3. How do these cut? Yep. Works for me. Now, boom, back to this guy, which we can just delete our temporary and pull our full sun grade. Magic. That is the beauty of color grading, is a lot of this is able to be copied and pasted between similar clips. Okay, this clip, very similar to this clip. Just a different thing we're filming. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. I'm going to paste it. All right, maybe you just noticed what I did, or maybe you've been waiting for me to notice this the whole time. But I did not move the adjustment layer for the drone like I did earlier. Here. Oh, that already feels heaps better. Ooh, great. That actually solves a lot of my issues with the contrast. Yep, super happy with that. So let me just make sure that this one's not lining up, so you would notice that it'd go. There would be a color jump. You can see it slightly there. So I do like to make sure everything's lined up. Because I have snapping on, it does normally a good job. But that's important. So now for this part, again, I'm going to need to just cut here. All of that's drone stuff, so I'm going to go ahead and just copy the adjustment layer. Zoom in, make sure everything's lining up. Perfect. And like I said a second ago, this drone shot is very similar. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this Lumetri and paste it. Boom. And that should get us right into the right space, the right amount of warmth. Okay, I am seeing the bright here. Might be a bit too bright in this shot because I might have just been exposed a little bit differently. I'm actually going to leave that at 0. Bring up the shadows a bit, and this is where I'll probably want to bring the highlights down a bit. There we go, because there's also text on screen. So now it's like we're kind of bright enough in this part where we're starting to compete. I also don't like the tint. Do I have tint on this? Yeah, I do. So double clicking resets it. So I am going to try and pull back on the whites. Which will affect a little bit the darker part, but it'll translate still, I think. Yeah, that feels still good with this. Still feels good with this. Yep. It's not taking over the text still, like it's still, I could if I wanted to, and I can do this, is a bit of automation. So jump into effects control, gonna see, oh, we have 2 Lumetris on, miss out, that's why. That'll do it. And delete both of them. Don't know when that happened. Okay, that seems fine still. This guy. That's what we want. Yeah. Great. So that seems like a bit of just a technical mistake on my end of doubling up on the Lumetri color. But here, the only thing I'm seeing is when the text is over this part, the brightness is probably a little bit more than I'd want. So what I am going to do is as soon as that brighter part starts to come in, say here, I'm going to go ahead and do an exposure. I'm going to add a keyframe. I'm going to jump to the end of the clip, which is here. I'm going to add another keyframe. I'm going to say here I want it to be 0, which looks a little bit more balanced with the beginning of the clip. So it'll start at 0.3, and then it'll just get darker slowly as it goes to the sky. And so we can actually do this a little bit earlier, and then I'll have it transition a bit quicker. So I'll have it start a little earlier actually. So here is where it basically will start to get darker. So by the time it gets up to here, the text hasn't really. Let's play that out.
And ideas and philosophies. 1 John 1:8 through 10 reads, "If we say we have no sin, refusing to admit that we are sinners, we delude ourselves and the truth is not in us. If we freely admit that we have sinned and confess our sins, he is faithful and just, true to his own nature and promise, and will forgive our sins and cleanse us continually from all unrighteousness." It's the
Yeah, I did not notice the slight change in exposure, but I think it's a nice touch because here it would be a bit too dark if we started with that, 0.3 up down to 0. That just feels great. And so I'm using the Bezier instead of linear key points because they kind of ease in and out a bit more, so it feels more natural. So don't do a ton of, I don't usually do a ton of keyframing or automation, but in this case it really did sort of just help. Next shot, I'm going to go ahead and just copy exactly what we did. However, bear in mind, if I'm copying what I just did, it's going to have keyframes, and so you are going to want to jump in and turn off the stopwatch and say yes to deleting the existing keyframes, and then whatever you set won't have the automation on it. So you can just get that right. going to jump into the Lumetri color. I'm going to do our comparison side by side. Let's find our previous shot, see how it blends, which is this guy. The end of that shot is about here. So let's just have a look at everything. See, how's our exposure? Probably want to go down a little bit. I don't mind if the stuff on the hill is a little bit of a silhouette. We don't need as much of the shadow brought up because that will wash out the sky. But we do want to wash it out enough that the shot that follows makes sense if we need to. Because if we were coming back to this, or I guess this is what it looks like graded, it is a bit washed out in the clouds, and so I want to be mindful of like that. So here, I'm just trying to get stuff into ballpark. Okay. Now that I've seen them side by side, it's pretty close. It'll just be any tweaks here. Okay. Shadows are quite dark, but we're still not hitting 0 over here on our spectrum waveform, RGB waveform. So I'm just going to keep moving. Yeah, that seems to work. So if I'm looking at the shadows here, and then I'm looking at the shadows sort of in here, they still seem like they're on a similar playing field, which is great. So then this is the only place we have a split screen where we're doing like 2 things in one, but it still should be pretty easy because we've basically used this clip and we've essentially used that clip too. So we just need to find it. I think this is the cross one. Yep. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy that Lumetri. And is it enable, disable? It's this guy. So I'm going to paste that there. And then I know we used the fruit not long ago. Was it this? This guy. This guy over here. So we know it's this layer. I'm going to just paste that there. And now I want to probably tweak this one a bit just to make sure it matches with the cross a bit more. And the reason that I'm going towards this look is what comes right after is this, which we need to go ahead and delete our demo grade and grab our full sun grade that we worked on in this. Okay, so that's our sort of final look, more or less. So the cross matches with your cross, and now what we're just going to want to do is potentially try a little bit of the grade here on the left image to see what needs to happen for them to feel like they belong next to each other. Probably want to keep the highlights up and maybe drop the whites a little bit if I can. That'll just create a bit more of a contrast and bring the shadows. The sort of black levels are closer now. I'm just not seeing the fruit a ton, and so I wonder if that's worth addressing by bringing up a little bit of, yeah. And then this might feel a little bit warm. Yeah, I almost prefer that. Yeah. So again, from this into this, back to this, I might bring a little bit. And I want to bring up the fruit a bit. Yeah, I think I do. see how that plays out with these.
And cleanse us continually from all unrighteousness. It's the foolishness of the cross. It seems absurd that this is the story that the God of all the universe would choose. Yet, this is how he's chosen to redeem us. And ultimately, we have the decision given to us today. Do we want our names to be written in the book of life? Do we want to live with God in his paradise forever? Eden was paradise, and it was with God.
Okay, we've only got, looks like 3 more clips, plus the ones we've already graded. So this guy, you can see the difference between the drone shot and how we're treating this, and then the extra bit of warmth and stuff that we have coming from sort of these shots. But because this is a drone shot, again, first thing we're going to want to do is update the adjustment layer to be for our drone clips. That should do it. And now I'm going to go ahead and see which drone shot. Well, I might just copy this one. Yeah, it's pushing us in the right direction, so we'll use that as our starting place. How much do we want the sky to be blown out? So again, the clouds here are kind of what I'm looking at in the sky. The sky here. We are getting like this bit of like pinkish stuff happening around here, which is probably just the quality of the camera. But the tint's probably a bit off. That tint seems to work better. This is the right. Yeah. Seems to be the right one. Okay. That kind of still works. Might be a bit bluish still, so this is again where I'm going to see if there's anything happening in the creative, which there is. I'm going to reset that. See if this helps us out. Yeah. That seems better. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy what we just worked out onto the next drone shot, which is very similar, maybe slightly different brightness and things. But let's go ahead. They match with each other. I'd say they do. It might be a slight luminosity difference. So let's see what happens if we pull this down. Yep. And we will be coming back to that talking head. So if we throw up this side by side, we can have a look at how the sky and things are translating. It's definitely a bit more green, like a lot more green. $27.1. Okay. May not look like I'm doing much, but I'm just working subtly on the... I'll leave that alone. How do these cut together now? Yeah, it still works. I might do this a little bit here as well. Might pull back here. Add a bit of warmth back in to the highlights so that these translate better. Okay, let me go ahead and, is this full sun still? I think it is. Delete my, oh, there is no grade on that one, so I'll copy my Lumetri, paste it, paste it, boom. Okay, let's have a watch from here, see how it feels.
Do we desire in our hearts to know him, to love him in the same way that he loves us? And the reality is, we all have choice. We all have freedom. From day one until where we find ourselves in history today, God has always given freedom. He's not imposing on anyone. See, you do not have to choose him. He wants you to. He wants what's best for you, and he knows what's best for you because he created you with.
This is basically a jump cut, just punched in a bit to hide the edit.
What will you do with Jesus? Will you believe in your heart? Will you confess with your mouth that he is Lord? Because if you do believe and you do confess,
see how I feel about that.
Will you believe in your heart? Will you confess with your mouth that he is Lord? Because if you do believe and you do confess, behold, all things are new. The old on you. He leaves that.
So color's fine. I'm just trying to work out if I'm still okay with this edit or if I prefer something else. But
will you believe in your heart? Will you confess with your mouth that he is Lord? Because if you do believe and you do confess, behold, all things are new. The old has passed away.
we're gonna keep it for now since I don't have a better idea. So last drone shot. Let me see. This old guy should, I think the drone shot that looks most like this is probably more of this guy. So I am gonna go ahead and copy that and paste it. And then we're gonna pull our adjustment layer for drone over top, zoom in a bit, make sure. So you'll notice here I kind of got it a little off. Make sure that covers the whole thing. And then let's have a look at the Lumetri for this. Just gonna go and bring it down a little bit because we have text on screen and there's this sort of brighter section over here, top right. And so I don't mind coloring things, but I do wanna that's just making the top blow out. And so by either we get the clouds in or we get a bit of the detail here in the trees, right? That looks better down here, but the top blows out. This looks great for the sky, but the bottom looks really dull. So again, this is where we go hunting for what works best, considering there's text on screen. I can pull that down a bit, counteract this a little. Nah. Bring the black level down a little bit and just mess with the overall exposure. It's still really easy to see this, and it's a long drone shot where it's always got the sort of darker part of the mountain still. We could do, what is it? We could do like a little gradient if we wanted to, where we, let's see. I'm going to do another Lumetri color. So I'm basically just going to paste the same one we did earlier on here. But this time I'm going to reset it so it's not doing anything. And then I'm going to open it. I'm going to go ahead and create a 4-point polygon. Oh, sorry. And there a way just to drag? Yeah. If I hold shift, I'm able to drag the whole, whoop. What did I just do? I mean, it was working on this side. How did I do that? Well, there is a way to do this, and we will find it. Let me just see if I can do this. Mask expansion. Oh no, that's different than what I want. That moves it. This adds a point. This grabs a point. Hold shift. No. Hold command. No. Command deletes a point. You know what? We'll find it. So you do it on the bottom one, and then magically it's fine? That makes no sense. Anyways, here we go. Mask opacity 100. Yeah. We're going to do a bit of a blend. So this is the blending mode. Boom. Okay, cool. That's now, we've got a normal Lumetri, but now anything I do is just going to happen up there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring some of the white levels down, and I'm going to bring some of the highlights down to around there, say, because I'm going to jump back into our other Lumetri from here, and I'm going to push up the highlights. Maybe 31-ish. Yeah. I'm going to push up the highlights. And I might do the mask expansion a bit as well, just to make sure we're covering everything. But then, so basically, we're only affecting the top area with our mask here, and we still keep some details in the clouds. We can bring some of the shadows down. Yep, that to me now feels a little better. So you can see what we've done here is that's the overall look affecting everything. And that's just the top part where we've brought down some of the highlights to kind of counteract some of the brightness that I wanted in the rest of the image. So basically just isolating an area. Now we can see, change their order. Because if I change their order, whatever Lumetri is on the bottom will be the one that works in the panel. And so now I can, try some other stuff. Okay, I think we're close. Let's have a little watch. I mean, it looks beautiful. If I turn off the Kinetic 3 Creative LUT, you're seeing how much we're getting from that. Then if I turn off the basic correction, you see how much we're doing there. Then obviously we did the isolated correction, which is bringing the top back into control. So all in all, this is feeling really good. Now what I'm going to do is one more quick pass where I just quickly kind of scrub and see if everyone's blending, if, you know, with fresh eyes, so to speak, since I haven't looked at some of these clips in a while, if everything still is lining up in a color space in a way that I feel like makes sense, in a way that I like. So here I can tell like our black levels are a bit higher than probably where we landed later, but I might address that with another adjustment layer. This guy looks great. This guy being the shot. I wasn't referring to myself looking great. However, the color is not bad. I did help with the color, as I mentioned earlier, that I went ahead and got a sunburn, as you can see. So no worries. Went ahead and supported the cause, giving me some more color to play with. That was the first step in my color grade, right? Go ahead and get some color on my skin. Since I live in Texas, it's been a bit wintry, and so I didn't have that option. But in the Dominican, I definitely did. That feels a little orangish to me, so I might just like pull back a little bit on it. Not bad. Love the drone shots. Something about a drone shot, it's like the Apple TV screensavers. I don't know, I can just sit and watch them. They're so interesting. Okay. Love this. I'm just also checking to make sure my adjustment layers seem to be in the right places. And I'll usually do like a final pass at some point where I kind of just clean everything up, but I still need to mix audio. I still need to do a couple of things, so all this is feeling great. This is a little bit tealish, which I did throw some of that. Let me turn off the creative. Yeah, I see what I'm doing. Yeah. Just gonna back off the slightest bit from how greenish it is. Make sure there's enough tint, pink tint, to match with the rest of the stuff. Okay. Yeah, I'm really glad I did that top. That helps a lot with being able to have enough detail here. Cool. This is feeling great. Next step. This is the part where we now bring in some grain, and sort of what I like to do is try adding a bit of saturation and stuff across the board. Here, this is a side by side, which is why we've got the double stack. So I think what's going to make the most sense here is going to be to move all of these things up one. As you can see, I've already got something there, and I like to make sure that I had it at 0 when I lifted it. So we've got now this extra place here for another adjustment layer. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag my adjustment layer onto that, extend it for the duration of the piece. I'm going to go ahead and click label. I'm going to choose mango, because mango's awesome. So I have done a previous project where I graded and everything, and so because I like to try and keep things consistent as much as possible, I'm going to go ahead and just click on this adjustment layer and see what's happening. We've got on this one a Lumetri color that looks like it's, what's it doing? It's doing nothing nothing there. It's adding 113. It's taking saturation from 113 to 113 from 100, and it's adding vibrance 28.2. So let's go ahead and just assume that that's a good move. I don't think it's doing anything else. I'm going to go ahead and copy this Lumetri onto this, hit Command V. So now we're adding that amount of saturation across absolutely everything. It might be too much with the LUT that we're using, so I am probably just going to do what looks better to my eye here and say, okay, that's vibrancy. Let's try around 6. Saturation. Let's have like a look at a B-roll shot. Yeah, that's so bad if we're, saturating that much. The whites in the lens flare become really weird. So let's try something around like 114-ish. And again, I'm not saying the numbers because the numbers is what matters. It's more of like, as I move it, I'm seeing how much something responds and thinking, okay, cool. How much do I want to push it? So this is starting to be a little better. Okay, let me disable. See, so it's just adding that extra bit of saturation. The other thing I want to do with it is potentially just a slight amount of sharpening. Obviously unsharpening. I'm talking like, let's try 2.1. We don't need to do a lot because grain actually works as sharpening. It's like part of its side effect. Yeah, that does help a bit. Just clean it up. Yep. I'm liking so far what it's doing. How's it affecting the drone shots? So like, again, let's take the sharpening to 0. And we'll play this clip.
Experience
We'll do this.
to experience the separation of God, but humanity was perfect, and there were certain instructions.
So that was without the sharpening. Now I'm going to add the sharpening that I kind of landed on, which I thought was maybe 2.1. Watch that same clip again.
Experience the separation of God, but humanity was perfect, and there were certain instructions given.
It's subtle enough that I think we're okay. I just realized that the drone to begin with is already sharper. And so if I disable this clip, it's harder to tell now, but when there's movement, it is maybe a bit too much. So I'm going to go 1.8. So just a little bit less.
The separation of God, but humanity was perfect, and there were.
Yeah, I think it's helping. Again, we can try stuff. So now I'm going to go back to what was my other cut that we talked about. Wait a minute. Why am I dragging this around? Oh, I just clicked on it. Cool. And the other adjustment layer was something that I looked like I had film convert on. So film convert is what I use to get my grain. It does a bunch of film emulation, but you'll see here, just like, look at how much grain I'm throwing on this thing. If I turn off film convert, you'll see it's a very clean image. It was shot very clean, but then the moment you turn on film convert, I'm getting two things basically from this. A little bit of a look from this FJ, which is a Fuji 8543 VD, which I think stands for vivid film. So it's emulating that color a bit, but then it's also giving me the film Luma, which is basically how it's interpreting the brightness, and it makes it look a bit more filmic. And it's crazy how good it is, I think, at making it look a little bit more analog. And that's kind of what I like. I like that it makes it feel, I guess the word that I would use is human, like it makes it feel more human. And then on here, this is where I've got Lens Distortions Explorer Teal. So you'll see that's the look. But for what I'm working on now, I'm not using Explorer Teal. I'm using Gamut IO's Kinetic LUT pack. And so I'm going to go ahead and ignore the Lumetri color and just grab film convert, nitrate, copy that onto, without moving my timelines around, onto this orange layer, Command V, and boom, you're noticing now a couple of things. A, the grain's there. B, I had used this to warm it a bit as well, which I don't know that we want to do with the LUT that we're now using because Kinetic has such a strong look. And secondly, this film Fuji whatever is probably not something we want to use because it's too intense with the color we already have. So what I'm going to go do is just take the chroma down to 0, as we've done, and now to film Luma, how it's interpreting the sort of lightness, brightness. We're going to try something a little bit more subtle. So you can see all the grain. If I turn off film convert, see all that grain disappears. And that's from here. So size 4, strength 100, saturation 100. So it usually looks pretty good out of box, but you can see in some of these moments what a bit of the grain is looking like. So maybe in here we can dial in a bit, like, do we want saturation? And I think I don't really want it to be colored grain. I'd rather be sort of like a monochrome grain. This is how much. What I find is I go way over the top in the look of what the grain strength is in Premiere, because by the time you export it and upload it to YouTube, it seems like most of it disappears. And I don't know if that's part of like the algorithms in YouTube or like just with compression, if it removes this kind of what's happening. But for whatever reason, I can have something that feels like a ton of grain in Premiere, but it doesn't feel like a ton of grain then the moment I export it, which I don't know. It's just something trial and error, right? Like this feels super grainy here, but the moment I make an export,
what a crazy consequence.
It won't look half as grainy. And I don't even know if on YouTube what you're seeing right now is translating, but like, let me play this little clip.
What I find fascinating is that at the center of this paradise known as Eden, God gave Adam.
I am going to want to go back on what I decided on sharpening earlier and probably do 2.1. Slight more vibrance. Slight more saturation in here. I can also decide if I want to warm it, want to cool it. I'm going to just go 1.1. So across the board, we're getting slight more warmth. So that's a lot of grain, right? But if I turn off nitrate and play the same clip,
Consequence. But what I find fascinating,
very little natural grain. However, as I mentioned, I think it does a really nice job of bringing it all together. Film Luma at 100 here looks fine. Film Luma at 100 here does not look fine, which is why I've done only 31. So let's kind of see drone shots. Yep, that looks fine. That looks fine. And again, you'll notice that I have the text above the adjustment layer, because if the text was to be below it, you'd start getting the grain on the text and any of the color grade on the text, which if that's what's desired, sure. But typically I don't think I prefer it. So I'd say we're pretty close to where we want to be. I would love to see here how the Film Luma changes what we're seeing. Wow, that actually, I think, I think 31 is probably close to where we want to be. I think that a little bit on, not all the way, is probably close to where we want to be. This looks slightly not orange enough. So just keep going. So I really am just seeing how everything interprets now. So if we disable the grain / slight saturation, whatever layer, you can see the difference it's making, which I think it's a move in the right direction everywhere I've looked so far. The only thing I might do is tell the master here to do negative 0.6-ish on the tint, so it's not so pink everywhere. Yeah, still looking better. Everywhere I'm seeing is looking better. This clip feels like it could have potentially a little bit more highlights. Cool. Great. So as of now, I'm feeling really good with how this looks. One thing I do want to test is just what happens if I bring the adjustment layer above the text that has grain and a slight bit of color, if it just kind of makes it feel. Kind of like it. Let's see. The slightest adjustment, but it basically brings the white from being perfect white, as you can see here on the top, to, if I enable it, they drop down a little bit, become slightly yellow, as you can see. And I mean, to the human eye, it's probably not going to be, oh no, that's not white, because it's close enough. But you'll notice here on the crossfades in and out now, it's got grain on it, as opposed to if I disable it, that's a perfect clean image. And I kind of like the grain. So now I have to decide whether I want the perfect white, whether I want to do another layer that just has grain for this and not affect the text, or if I want all of this to sort of bake in together to feel more holistic. And I think the answer to it is I might want it on top just to feel a little bit more holistic. Again, no right or wrong, just different ways of doing it. So if I bring this back down, that's a sort of cleaner look. Yeah, I don't know. I think the white being true white and the grain sitting on the footage is not a bad idea. I don't know if I need grain on the text for the transitions. I also realized that usually when I export, the saturation doesn't feel as intense in the export as it does in Premiere. So I will sometimes push it a bit further in what I'm seeing here in Premiere than what I expect it to be on sort of the final bake. Cool. All right, I'm feeling happy. I think I'm going to sit with this, see how it feels moving forward. But that's been part 2. Go ahead and run back part 1 if you missed that, where I really go into a lot more of the details around how I think about grading, my approach to it. We'll grade the first, half of the piece, which is really where we work on developing the look. I also talk about conversion LUTs and shooting log and a couple other things like that. And the video before that, where I talk about workflow, I go ahead and edit part of this video with you guys. And so looking to do a mixing and mastering sort of audio focused one in the future. And hopefully this is interesting. Hopefully it's helpful. If you have thoughts, questions, comments, please drop them below. And I would love to see your thoughts, love to hear your workflow. This is sort of where we've landed with the grade. Once this piece is finished, I will go ahead and be releasing it on my YouTube channel that's called Unseen Verses. So it's at UnseenVS. And you can find that at unseenvs.com if easier. So UNSEE Unseen, yep. EENVS.com. Unseenvs.com is the best place to find this content. So this is what I've been editing for. And you can go and watch the finished clip then when this is all done. And it'll be there, and you can see some of my previous work, and you'll notice how similar what you're seeing and what we've worked on today is to the other pieces, such as the one that I mentioned here that was recorded in India and has a ton of color and a ton of, just cool drone shots and all kinds of fun stuff. So hopefully this has been helpful, and I look forward to the next time when we can keep exploring and learning and figuring out how to make great content that looks good, sounds good, and hopefully makes a difference, carries a strong impact, because that's the goal. It's all supporting the story, right? So hopefully this has been worth your time.